Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. And in this video and a couple of more videos after this, we will be learning about how to create a simple budgeting application using SwiftUI and SwiftData. If you haven't watched any videos on SwiftData, then I do have a Udemy course that is currently maybe 2.5 hours or so, but I keep on adding to that particular course as I learn more. And the link of that course is right there in the YouTube description. So definitely do check it out. Okay, so budgeting application, we need to allow the user to create budgeting categories like a vacation, food, groceries, dining out, movies, clothes. All of those things are budgeting categories. And that is what we want to do in this particular video. We want to add the budgeting categories for a particular user. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to organize my code in a little bit of a different way. I'm just going to go ahead and create a folder called screens. This is where I will add all of my pages, all of my screens. And screens and views will be a little bit different. Screens is like the entire screen, and view is like a smaller component that is injected or that is part of a screen. Let's go ahead and add a SwiftUI view. Now in this SwiftUI view, I'm just going to call it budget list screen. All right, so there we go. We have the budget list screen. We actually don't need the content view anymore. So if you want, you can go ahead and delete it. That is perfectly fine. Just make sure you update the app file and reflect that what is your starting point, which in this case will be budget list screen. Great. Let's go back to the budget list screen. So the budget list screen will allow you to add a particular budget. All right, so that's what the budget list screen is all about. But budget model, we don't really have that. So let's go ahead and create models. I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. And this particular model is going to represent the actual budget. So it can have a lot of different properties or whatever properties that you actually want. I'm just going to go ahead and add this file right there. And now we will go ahead and implement the model. So think about all the different properties you can have in the budget, right? Now we're not going to add like crazy amount of properties. I'm just going to limit it to 2, the name of the budget and the limit of the budget. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a class for the budget, which will consist of just 2 properties, the name of the budget, so this can be groceries, vacation, and so on, and the limit of the budget. I'm just going to say double, and going to create a initializer for that also, which takes in the name and the limit. And this is it. Now, right now, this is just a simple class, and it's not really going to be persisted into SQLite or using core data or using SwiftData. So we have to use the model macro. So model macro is going to allow us to get this particular class, all the features that it can now be persisted through the use of SwiftData into a medium like SQLite. Okay. So that is our particular class. It's called budget. That's perfectly fine. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. Let's go back. Now, one of the things that we have to do is we have to register. We have to the model container, which is kind of like initializing the SwiftData. If you're using previews, which I am right now, I can go ahead and say over here model container. Now you can see it kind of doesn't really come up because we haven't really imported SwiftData. So let's go ahead and import SwiftData. And let's go ahead and write it again over here. Now all of this is only going to work for the preview. And I'm going to show you how you can make it work for the simulator also when you actually run the app on a simulator or on the device. We have different overloads over here. I'm just going to use the last one, and I'm going to provide the persistent type. So we have to tell the model container that what are the expected types, what are the types of the models that that we can expect. So right now we only have one, which is budget So we're just going to put 1, which is budget.self. If you have multiple models, like we will eventually have each budget can have transactions, then we will a little bit talk about it, that do you want to put it like another one over here, or the budget will be enough. All right. Okay, so we have the budget list screen. Now the budget list screen doesn't really do anything. I mean, it doesn't have anything right now. We need to create a form. We also need to create some state variables so that we can gather that information. So there we go. I'm going to create 2 different state variables, one for the name and one for the limit. This means that now I can go ahead and, add a small form with all of these features. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a form. I can also build section inside the form. So I can say new budget if you're adding a new budget. And now I can have a couple of different things. I can have these 2 text boxes. One is for the name, one is for the value. And if I refresh my Xcode previews over here, you can see that now it appears. Great. If you want to use a navigation stack and a navigation title in the preview, you can also wrap your screen with a navigation stack. This way, you'll be able to go ahead and set the navigation titles like budgets. Apart from that, we also need the save button. The save button is going to allow you to, save the budget. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a save button. And we also have to validate. Validate means that user cannot make sure, user have to enter the name and users have to enter the limit. Now you can see the defined type over here, nothing really works. That's just a bug in Xcode previews. It doesn't really work. If I run it in the simulator, we can make it work. So now let's go ahead and create a property that will validate the form. So there's our property that's going to validate the form. You can see that I'm using a property called isEmpty or whitespace, which actually doesn't really exist. So this means that I will have to create this property, and I'm going to create this property as an extension. Extensions. And in the extensions, I'm going to add a string extension because it's extending the string type. And the property name will only be just one single property, which is going to make sure that if the string is empty or it contains a white space. Now let's go back, and hopefully this is going to resolve. There we go. Now we want to enable the save button only when the form is actually valid. So it should be disabled if it is not valid. So we're going to use the not symbol over here. Is the form not valid, then the button should be disabled. And you can see that it is disabled. If I run the application right now, we can quickly check in the simulator that whether the button gets enabled or disabled based on our form, based on we entering the name and the limit, and if that is working fine or not. So let's go ahead and run this. You can see we're running it on the simulator because Xcode previews are currently not really working. Even in the simulator, if I try to type in something, I can't really type, but there's a easy way to fix it. If you go to I/O, keyboard, toggle software keyboard, if you now you'll be able to type it. There we go. All right, so I can enter some budget and I can enter some letters over here, but that doesn't work. So if I enter a number over here, that works. And the only things you should be able to put in there will be the number because we are displaying the number keyboard. All right. Okay. So it looks like this is working fine. The next step that we want to do is we want to actually save the particular budget, right? So over here, I'm going to call a function called save budget. Now, there is no function called save budget. So let's go ahead and create a property over here, save budget. And inside the save budget, now I can go ahead and say budget equals to budget with a name, which is coming from the name, and the limit. and I'll say limit. Now I can unwrap it over here, and the reason that I can unwrap it over here is that I am only going to call say budget if the form is actually valid. So I'm already checking that if limit is not equal to null. All right, so that's the important part. And if it's not equal to nil, then I should be able to just safely unwrap this. All right. The next thing is to actually save it. Now we have already injected the model container over here. We already injected the container with the type. If we want to save, we can access the model context. And the way that you are going to do it is by the use of environment. So you'll use model context, private var context. And now you can use the context.insert and a particular model. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on, why didn't we call the save after the insert? Like, what about the save function? And you can definitely call the save function if you want to. The insert is also going to insert the budget into the database, into the persisted medium, but that is kind of like done automatically. This means that when the budget is created and based on, automatically saving the budget when you're inserting, meaning on the context itself, there's a property or a feature called is auto enabled, is auto save enabled, which means that whenever you add something or insert something into the context, it will just automatically be persisted to the database. So you don't really have to call the save function if you don't want to. All right. So this is fine. Let's go back to our spend tracker app, and the one thing that you see over here is that we are not really injecting the model container over here. So one of the things we can do is simply inject it on the window group itself. There we go. And since you want to use the navigation stack, we can also go ahead and wrap everything with the navigation stack. So this means that the budget list screen will be wrapped inside a navigation controller. So this is hopefully going to allow us to add something. Let's go back to our screen, and we will have to run it in the simulator because the Xcode previews, at least at this particular moment, it's not allowing to interact with the keyboard. So let me go ahead and add vacation. That's one of the budget that I have. And let's say that the vacation budget is $2,000, and I'll save it. Now, even though I save it, it doesn't really display anything right now. So it's saved or not saved, we have no idea. Other thing you will notice is that a lot of different messages are being displayed on your output window. Since this is Xcode 15 and it's the early version of Xcode 15, which means it's beta version, all of these things will eventually and hopefully go away later. So don't worry too much about it. All right. So now the question is, well, how do we display all this information? So in order to display the information, we will go back to the budget list screen and we'll create a different section over here. So I'll create a section and I'll call this section budgets. I mean, I guess you can call it something else. Instead of the budgets have a navigation title, maybe we should call it like the name of the app. Maybe that's much better, spend tracker. Okay. So now we have this budget section, and inside this budget section, we are going to be displaying kind of like all the budgets. So, or at least the budget that we have added. So we'll go through the budgets, but there is no such thing as budgets. So where is this coming from? In order to fetch all the budgets, we will use query. Query private var budgets, an array of budgets. And that's all we need to do to create this particular query. Now, some people, when they read this, they're like, well, I am putting my query, I'm putting all of this code inside my view. Well, it's a correction over here. The view in SwiftUI is actually a view model. So you're not really putting anything inside a view. you're putting everything inside a view model. Having said that, if you want to put this inside your model, that is perfectly fine also. I mean, you can create a property over here that can return you a fetch descriptor, and that will give that you can inject in the query. But right now, I don't really plan to use or display budgets on any other screen, so this is perfectly fine too. The other thing to note over here is that if I do have any business logic, which currently I don't, but if I do have any business logic, I can still use my budget class and put the business logic as a function, as a property inside my class. All right. Now, I also will have a YouTube link right there in the description of this YouTube video about one of the presentations that I did for New York Swifty conference about the Swift UI architecture. So I highly recommend that you watch that also. It has a lot of different things that I learned over the course of 3+ years. So definitely watch that. All right. So let's go back to listing all these things. So I'll say budgets. I'll have access to the budget. And what we want to do is we want to simply display the budget. So I'll display the name of the budget. The budget can have a name, a spacer, and we are going to also say budget.limit, and the format will be currency. Now over here we do have to provide some sort of a currency code. Now I'm just working with US dollars, so I'm just going to say USD, but obviously this is not a good practice, because now if you are running this application from a different region of the world, you will always get the currency in US dollar. So always try to use the correct one, which is from locale.current.currency.identifier, I believe. And I believe that is going to give you something like the identifier of your country. If it's null, then yes, you can go ahead and use US dollar. This is a pretty long thing to write, so you can even create an extension for this. Like you can say locale.currency or something, and that can also work. All right. So let's go ahead and run this application. And hopefully we'll be able to see our budget. Oh, here we go. Vacation budget, US dollar, $2,000. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add another budget for groceries. I'll limit it to $500 and I'll say save. And now you can see the groceries is also added. One thing you will see that if I add something, it doesn't really remove it from there. It's so kind of annoying. So we can also go ahead and try to remove something. We can remove it. I guess we can remove it over here. We can say name equals to kind of like empty and limit equals to nil, kind of like clearing up the form. You can do it inside the save, but I will just leave the save alone for now. Okay, what else? So we have vacation, we have groceries. Let's say that maybe there's a budget for conferences, which is, let's say, $1,000, and I can save it. Oops, now you can see that this $1,000 is not getting cleared out. So you can see that we need to do something to clear this out. Limiting it to nil does not work. All right, so it looks like this is a bug, and this has been around for actually a very long time, probably the initial versions of SwiftUI also. So the solution, well, there's no simple solution. I mean, you can go ahead and change your limit property over here to a string and then do the conversion and all that stuff. I'm just going to leave it like that. Yes, it's super annoying to have that be there even when you cleared the fields. Hopefully, Apple is going to address this in the next release of SwiftUI, but I don't think I'm really sure about that because it has been around, as far as I know, from the first or initial versions. Let's go ahead and run our application and look at it one more time. So we have our budget, which is great, right? The budget can have transactions, and that is actually something that we'll be learning about next time, that how can we have budgets with transactions. Right now you can see that we have budget, but I can't really go into the vacation. There's no navigation link that takes me there. There's no navigation link that takes me to groceries. So I can't really see that, okay, this $500 is composed of what? I mean, how much did we spend on chips and cookies and meat and groceries, other stuff related to groceries. So all of that stuff we're going to be learning about as we move forward in this video series. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much and stay tuned for more. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. Check out my latest course, SwiftData Declarative Data Persistence for SwiftUI. This already has 185 students enrolled, and you can see that it is actually hot and new course. This course is currently around like 3.5 hours, and I keep on adding new content as I learn more. So currently you're going to get SwiftData in one-to-many relationship, many-to-many relationship, getting started with SwiftData, understanding the queries, and more. So I keep on adding the content as I'm learning more and more about SwiftData. So definitely check out this course. The link to this course will be right there in the description. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this video.